So I want to play this clip really quickly because yesterday we had Paul Ryan come out and say that Roy Moore should step aside. You had the RNC come out and say that they were pulling funding from the Roy Moore campaign. You had Mitch McConnell again saying, it's up to the people of Alabama. He believes the women. But Roy Moore, the way I put this earlier is I remember in the final years of George W. Bush, he really only gave speeches, in the White House or on military bases and military colleges because those were the only people that wouldn't boo him off the stage. And Roy Moore kind of took a similar approach, and he spoke, where else, in a church yesterday where he says he doesn't want to talk about these allegations. He just wants to talk about the issues.
Mm-hmm. I'm now facing allegations.
Allegations.
And that's all the press want to talk about. But I want to talk about the issues. I want to talk about where this country's going. And if we don't come back to God, we're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. When in doubt, use God.
Use God. And that is a pattern for him.
And it's been a successful one. I mean, he's built his career off of this. I mean, he has a very specific, he's like the distilled pure version of Christian nationalism. Like, this isn't like a casual, Roy Moore has built his career off of arguing that the United States of America is an inherently Christian nation, that it's been pulled away from that, and it needs to be drawn back to it. He lost his job because he refused to remove statues of the Ten Commandments in public locations. I mean, he has been a hero of hardline Christian nationalisms for a decade or more at this point. And so, why would he abandon it? And he also, with all these Republicans calling for him to step down, I mean, he's already just stood up to anybody who asked him to, remove Ten Commandments. He was willing to lose his job over it more than once. So he will. It seems to me he's always going to draw back to that Christian nationalist vibe. It's been his bread and butter for years now.
Yeah. Well, on that note, your piece at ThinkProgress.org, where I read everything that you write because I think you're so good at this stuff. But there was a letter posted over the weekend, this past weekend, listing 53 Alabama pastors allegedly endorsing the former judge. So after these allegations, we have 53 pastors who have come out to support Roy Moore, which I don't want to say says a lot about religion, because I think I had this conversation with my mother, right, who is a Southern Baptist, conservative her whole life, and she thinks that Roy Moore is terrible. Mm-hmm. As my mother puts it, he's almost as bad as Bill Clinton. So,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are some Christians, conservative Christians out there, that this is too much for them. Mm-hmm. Is it enough for them to vote for a Democrat? Yeah, I'm not so sure. But explain to me your story, because your headline here is several pastors dispute a new letter claiming that more than 50 faith leaders still support Roy Moore. Do they or don't they, Jack?
So this is an interesting question. So Kayla Moore, Roy Moore's wife, over the weekend published this letter signed by 53 pastors endorsing him, right? And so, that headline everybody went with for a while. So, oh my gosh, these 50 plus pastors have come out for Roy Moore. Well, then a few of them started getting calls, some of these actual pastors. And within 24, 48 hours, about 4 of them said, yeah, no, I didn't consent to having my name added to this. I don't want to have my name included in this list of people. I don't support Roy Moore. Or in one case, the guy was like, my church is in Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee. I haven't spoken with Roy Moore in a decade. This is not my state and not my problem. And so suddenly it became this contested thing about whether or not, what this letter actually was. So I went and called and tried to contact every pastor on that list.
Oh, wow.
And that hadn't already spoken out. So a few of them have already said, no, I definitely support Roy Moore. They had reiterated their endorsement. So I tried to contact all of them. Only 5 of them got back to me. And all 5 of them, to be clear, still support Roy Moore. And I asked them a few questions about why that was. But when I asked them about the letter, one of them didn't know it existed. One of them didn't realize, he said, what letter? Has it been changed? And then another one said, when I asked him about the letter, he said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God.
I still support Roy Moore. And then one of them said, yeah, it was clear with me. And then I asked him, okay, it looks like you live in Florida. And he's like, yeah, I live in Florida. And I was like, well, the letter's addressed to friends and fellow Alabamians. And he said, yeah, we lived in Alabama for 4 months at one point. And there's like 5 or 6 people.
By the way, I said this from the very beginning. Roy Moore is the Donald Trump of Alabama. Like, he has swindled and connived his way into public spotlight over and over and over again, just like Trump has, by lying. Like, this is so Trumpy. Let me guess, one of the pastors was named John Barron, and he still supports Roy Moore.
It is. I think what was fascinating about these conversations was that, like, some of them, one of them is actually like, there's about 5 or 6 that we don't believe live in Alabama, or there's not indications they actually live there. One of them is actually on the county council in Maryland, like, over there. He runs this Constitution Society that preaches a very similar message to Roy Moore, believing that that God is inherent to the American experiment, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so almost all of these churches are very, very small. These are not large Alabama churches. A lot of them are what we'd call storefronts. Some of them don't have websites. A few of these pastors we couldn't even find. But it is an interesting thing because they still, the ones we spoke with still support him outside of those 4 that came out and said we don't want our names on this list. And it looks like there was another letter that was published during the primary that was this letter that had all of these names on it. And the campaign has not responded to us, but all signs indicate that this is an edited version of that letter that Caleb Moore republished without contacting at least several of these pastors without confirming their consent.
Isn't that curious how that happens?
So it is quite a story about he still has support, but it looks like they're not checking to see where that support still lies.